We're going to talk a little bit about Florida, and this section right over here, you're going to hear from Ryan. This is a little bit of a longer video, but Ryan is so good, and he knows this market inside and out. They were just, Ryan, and then in the next video, you're going to see Steven. They were just here hanging out with us in Utah, and but they shot these back home, and you're going to hear a little bit about what the process is like in Orlando. It's a little bit different than Indianapolis. You're going to see that. And so I'm going to go ahead and press play on this. It'll take just a second. Ryan will come in the view, and then we're going to leave the map up. And maybe Brandon, if he starts talking about certain areas, maybe you can come and just kind of point them out. But anything you want to say about Florida before we roll the video?
We're good.
Okay,
We can get
awesome.
going.
I'm sure that works. Play. Oh yeah, we could dim the light. Let's see. Let me try again. Oh yeah, I forgot I have to wait a couple seconds. Let's see. In 3. There he is.
Hello, my name is Ryan Heimer.
It's dramatic.
I'm the Florida Portfolio Manager for Done For You Real Estate. Today we're discussing why an investor may want to consider buying a property in the state of Florida as part of their overall real estate investment portfolio. In order to do that, you need to understand why Florida is such a growth and momentum state. Many of you are hearing about Florida as being a growth market and having a lot of potential upside or appreciation, but we need to understand why. Well, first of all, Florida is known as the Sunshine State. It's now home to over 20 million people. And the state has recently passed the state of New York as to become the third most populous state in the United States. That growth rate is incredible right now. As of right now, it's the beginning of 2018, Florida is growing by about 600,000 people a year. That's right, they're saying by the year 2028, we will have 6 million new residents. So where are all these people coming from? And why? Well, what's interesting about Florida, first of all, is its warm weather. It's the only, outside in the continental United States, it's the only tropical type environment. I think the only other one in the United States would be the state of Hawaii. But within the continental United States, it is basically never-ending summer. In fact, there's a license plate here that actually says never-ending summer. So we have beautiful weather 6 months out of the year, and then we have the hot season. But the sun is always shining here, and in the summer we do get some rain showers pretty much every day. But it just helps us cool off a little bit and then return to our sunshine state of mind. But the state of Florida is really interesting. Right now it's been named as one of the most progressive states in terms of being fiscally responsible. The current governor, Rick Scott, has taken the state from running deficits 5-6 years ago of about $1 billion a year to we're having surpluses of over $1 billion a year. How has that happened? He's been very pro-growth and has been focusing on reducing taxes. So our tax burden is very low. We have no state income tax, and taxes are actually coming down. Last year, I received a letter that says the homestead, which protects primary residences for Florida residents, is actually going to reduce our property taxes. So our property taxes have been going down as homeowners. It's pretty amazing. Some other things that have been reduced is the cost to open businesses. Some of the filing fees have gone down. And so the current leadership not only has been focused on being very fiscally responsible, but they've been focused on being a very pro-growth state. The state is adding thousands, tens of thousands of new jobs, and last year in 2017, it was the #1 state for job growth in the United States. They're predicting that we will fall within the top 5 in terms of job growth in 2018, and that we'll be in the top 3 states for population growth. So we've been running a great track record over the last few years, and of course this fall was a pretty dark recession that the state of Florida had. Florida's state economy runs on a number of different things. A lot of people think of tourism. Of course, I'm in the Orlando area, so everybody thinks of Disney World and the mouse. But when the economy contracted in the United States, there was a number of things going on here. First, there was an epic real estate bust, and real estate prices had gotten so out of hand because people didn't really need to have more than a heartbeat in order to get a loan. So things have obviously changed. This recovery is very real now. But we had a lot of tourism jobs and a lot of other types of jobs dry up when all the investors sort of left the state. Historically, Florida has a track record of a lot of boom and bust cycles, But what's happening now is the state economy is becoming very diversified. In Orlando, for example, tourism still leads as the number one job growth driver. However, healthcare has really exploded in this area, as well as the private aerospace industry. Many of you have heard that NASA sort of left with the space shuttle program. What's replacing that now is the different companies like Blue Origin and SpaceX. They're all launching new satellites and rockets on the Space Coast, which is only about 50, 60 miles from the Orlando area. In addition to that, we have a lot of other drivers. For example, along with the space industry, we have the military kind of industrial industry. Lockheed Martin, for example, has a lot of jobs in the Orlando area. They're hiring hundreds of new engineers right now. In my neighborhood, for example, 3 of my neighbors are Lockheed Martin engineers. In addition to that, they're building the new B-2 bomber out on the East Coast. Again, that's not very far from Orlando, less than an hour's drive. They're hiring 2,500 new jobs for that, starting at $100,000 a year. So there's a lot of diversification taking place within the Orlando economy and Central Florida in general. The Florida economy continues to be humming along. Miami, Tampa, Orlando, Jacksonville, all those states are seeing robust job growth right now. They're seeing a lot of population growth. So where are all the people coming from? A lot of people ask me that. The people are coming from a number of different locations. We're seeing incredible amount of people migrating from places like the state of New York, where they say the state of New York is losing 60,000 people per year to the state of Florida. I think, frankly, people are getting fed up with high tax burdens. People are looking for an alternative to where they're currently living. They can sell their $500,000, $600,000, $700,000 home in New York or New Jersey. They can come down here and buy a home for $300,000, $400,000 that is probably similar in size. They have money in their pocket to burn, and they're not being overburdened by state income taxes. The state's running very well. It's running very efficiently right now, and our state leadership has been able to get a lot of things done. But before we talk about that, let's look a little bit more. So we have people coming in for migration from the Northeast. That's predominantly the number one net migration in. We also have a lot of immigration coming, especially from areas in South America. For example, Venezuela has been a big source of immigration into the state of Florida. We have an economy in Venezuela that's crashing from a brutal dictator. People in South America are looking to escape, and they want to come into the United States. Their gateway to the United States is Florida. And so historically, there's been a lot of people coming into Miami, and now further generations are looking for a piece of the American dream. And for them, that means living in a home, a single family home specifically, that has a fence and a yard and a place for their dog to run. They're coming from countries where they are living in high-rise apartment buildings, and they're looking for a little bit of space to spread out. So Orlando specifically, Florida, but Orlando specifically has been a very hot place for people from South America to be coming. Cuba as well, you've probably heard there. And then Brazil. Brazil's had some economic challenges over the last few years. We have a lot of Brazilians coming into the Florida market. We have a lot coming into Orlando. My church, for example, has a English, a Spanish, and a Portuguese mass on Sundays. So it's very interesting. In addition to that, so we're seeing a lot of migration from the Northeast. We're seeing a lot of immigration from South America. More recently, you've probably heard about some of the hurricanes. The hurricane that hit Puerto Rico has devastated that island, and Puerto Ricans are United States citizens. So the transition for them to come over to Florida is very logical, it's very simple, and a clean transition. The governor says that we've had 200,000 people permanently relocate to Florida, 200,000 since fall of last year, and they're anticipating another 300,000 from Puerto Rico alone. Puerto Ricans used to name New York City as their number one location to come into the mainland United States and relocate. That location now is Kissimmee, Orlando area. So we're seeing a lot of folks coming over. We're welcoming them with open arms, and we're very happy to have them as part of the home buyer pool and the tenant pool. So with all this migration happening and a ton of job growth taking place, what does that mean? Well, of course, the economy's been roaring back in the state of Florida, and a lot of it has to do with this combination of job growth, population growth, and of course, a overall low tax burden. So when I sort of look at where we're standing, I feel like we're in the right place at the right time. There's not many times in your life you can say that. Of course, things have come back substantially from the downturn. So a lot of people ask me, is it too late? Did I miss the boat? If you look around the United States, you're going to see housing markets that have pretty much fully recovered and then some. They're above their prior peak. They are, hot markets. Rents are starting to not make sense. That's not the case here. So in Orlando, for example, at the peak of the housing market, peak of the housing bubble, home prices were running $263,000. That was the median home price. Right now we're at $220,000. So as you can see, we have a lot of room to grow. We're not quite back to where the peak of the market was. And this area, and Florida especially, is kind of an anomaly because most of the United States has fully recovered from the housing crisis. Why would that be the case? If the job growth is so robust, the population growth is so robust, and the state's running so smoothly, why have home prices not just blown by their prior peak value? That's a question I get a lot. It's pretty simple. Foreclosure is judicial in the state of Florida. There's not many states like that. And so it took literally years for the foreclosures to work through the system. There's just a big shadow inventory overhang. So we have incredible demand for housing, but housing not available for purchase was one of the biggest problems that we had here. And a lot of the housing that was coming available was being scooped up by large Wall Street funds and institutional players coming into the space and putting tenants in them and renting them out. We've seen some of those groups starting to slowly liquidate. But what's interesting is most of that existing inventory has now worked through the system. It just trickled out for such a long period of time that there wasn't a big inventory dump. A lot of people are thinking there's just going to be this massive inventory. It just never really happened. And the population growth kept sort of absorbing that as the new homes would trickle onto the market. What does that mean for an investor, though? Well, what it means is in some places that you're looking to invest, you might be able to scoop up a home at 50, 60 cents on the dollar. Unfortunately, that's really not the case here. The reality is that you're buying homes a lot closer to today's market value, but keep in mind that today's market value is actually similar to about 2005, 2006. So we're not back to the peak, and you're still sort of missing a decade in there, which a lot of the U.S. is seeing. You're buying homes today at the peak, at a new all-time high. We're buying homes at a discount to the peak still. So from an investor perspective, I think that's really positive. And I think it means that we have some room to sort of run with the home prices. And what sort of reinforces that is rents. Rents, for example, in the Florida area are forecast to grow by another 16% or so in the next 3 years. And home prices have been running somewhere in the 9 to 10 to 11% annual increase rate. So, but what's interesting is rents are sort of keeping up with the home prices and have been. At some point, perhaps that disconnects a little bit, but we think that home prices are going to continue to rise for a few reasons. One of them is that the existing homes, there's not many out there. The supply is running less than a 3-month supply at the current absorption rates. And so what that's doing is putting a lot of pressure on home builders to come in and develop new land. We actually have some new home product that we've been able to supply to our investors. And we're talking brand new homes in the 165 to 185, 200 range at the time of this recording, January 2018. I don't think we'll be able to keep that up long term. The reason for that is some of these builders have come in, these large publicly traded builders, which by the way dominate the Orlando market. There's not a large secondary, mid-tier, localized home building market here. It's mostly large production, D.R. Horton, Lennar, those types of people are coming in, and that's who's building most of the inventory. But what's interesting is in the downturn, these large players scooped up already developed lots. So you had infrastructure and you had roads, curb, gutter, all of those things in place. In a lot of cases, there wasn't really much land development. So they're able to come in, scoop up thousands of lots at a very low price and are now in process of building those out. So what happens when those get built out? Well, they have to develop new land. And unfortunately, the cost to develop new land has really skyrocketed. And so any brand new, out of the ground, new developments have seen home prices much higher than the existing, already developed lots. So I think there's going to be a lot of pressure on the home prices over the next few years as we sort of transition from first the existing, already built homes, that inventory being absorbed by both people moving here, by large institutional players, and by individual investors as well, people like you watching this. Once that's happened, of course, some of that's still available, and that's why we think the timing is pretty good to get some of those existing homes. And then some of the new homes transitioning out from lots that were already finished. Those homes are what the market's absorbing right now. There's a good amount of that, but it's being absorbed very quickly. So I think once we go through the next couple of years, what we're going to see is home prices take another step up. Because the only thing that's going to be really available in a large enough quantity to absorb the population coming in is going to be brand new homes with new basis for lot purchases, new basis for raw land, and new basis for development. So I think things are really going to step up, and they're going to climb above that prior peak of $263,000, which again today is around $220,000 for the median home price. So I think we're going to see the next couple of years that the home prices are going to return to the prior peak, and that may take us to the year 2021. So pretty amazing when you think about it, that it's going to take almost 15 years to get back to where home prices were before. So I think that represents a fantastic opportunity. Just sort of drilling down a little bit about the housing market and the economy. Some of the things going on, some of the localized economic drivers that are fueling a lot of this job growth, they're pretty interesting. So in the downturn, there was some large infrastructure projects that were sort of put on the table as it would be great if we could get these funded. And then once the leadership changed in the state, they were able to cut deals and get things sort of funded and get them going. In the Orlando area, that's really created some interesting infrastructure things. For example, the main expressway that runs through the city is Interstate 4, and Interstate 4 is at its level of service. It's basically maxed out. They're in process of doing a $2 billion project right now to expand Interstate 4. It's called I-4 Ultimate. You can Google I-4 Ultimate. As you can see, they're putting 4 high-speed toll lanes right down the center throughout the entire city, or basically about 25 miles. Following that is another 20-mile stretch, I-4 Ultimate and beyond, where they're going to be expanding the next section down by the theme parks, Disney. And speaking of theme parks, obviously some big changes there. All the theme parks have been really expanding during the recovery. Disney, Universal has opened up its Harry Potter world, of course, which has been pretty amazing. It's created just a ton of new demand. Hotel rooms, thousands and thousands of new hotel rooms as people have come back. People now are comfortable. They have money in their pocket to spend. Of course, the Disney World, Walt Disney Company bought the Star Wars franchise, and I heard they've already made their return on that investment. But they're taking, for example, they're taking Hollywood Studios. It's getting a multi-billion-dollar, sort of gutting or renovation, and they're turning it into a largely, intensive Star Wars land. They're even building a fully immersive Star Wars hotel experience, which sounds really interesting. So there's a lot going on in the theme park space. Also, since the downturn, Legoland opened up here, which is pretty awesome, especially if you have little ones, come check it out. SeaWorld is expanding. There's some smaller theme parks that have been growing as well. But we've just seen a tremendous amount in the tourism space happening. So you have this I-4 Ultimate expansion, which is a ton of new jobs, $2 billion project. You've got the theme parks all expanding, and hospitality industry expanding, convention business expanding. But other infrastructure projects that are pretty amazing. The Sunrail opened up in the last couple of years, which is Orlando's light rail system. That's being expanded all the way south to Kissimmee and Point Siena right now. So opened up, and now they're basically doubling the size of it, and that's all happened in the last couple of years. The airport is undergoing construction on a multi-billion-dollar new terminal for international flights. We've just had a tremendous increase of passenger traffic to the airport. What's great about living in Orlando and being in Orlando is there's a direct flight to almost everywhere because of the Mouse, because of Disney World. So there's just people coming in at all times. I think the number's more than 65 million visitors. It's now the most visited city in the world. New York and Orlando were battling for that position about 5-6 years ago. Orlando edged out New York City and has sort of blown past it as the most visited city on the planet. So that's pretty exciting. And speaking of all those visitors coming in, a lot of those people also end up going to Miami. There's a new high-speed rail being constructed, private high-speed rail between Miami and Orlando. That's supposed to be open in the next 2 years. So there's a lot of big infrastructure projects taking place. We built a new soccer stadium. Our MLS team is doing really well. The Citrus Bowl saw a $300 million renovation. I mean, large-scale infrastructure projects that are actually happening. So it's pretty fantastic. Other job drivers, for example, there's a large intermodal facility in Winter Haven, which popped up a lot of new distribution. Amazon, Walmart, e-commerce center, FedEx distribution, a lot of those types of things coming in. So when you have a state that's growing by 500,000-600,000 people a year, it's just going to bring a lot of jobs coming with it. So anyway, when you're looking at homes, what can you sort of expect here? Well, you can expect to pay in the kind of under $200,000 range for an entry-level single-family home. They're renting very quickly, depending on the home. Somewhere in the $1,400 to $1,600 range is pretty common for the sub $200,000 price point. Again, when you're sort of building a real estate portfolio, you think of it as like your 401k. You're going to have some dividend type stocks, and those might not be historically a city like Florida or Orlando, or Phoenix or Las Vegas, but those might be the type of stocks or positions you have in your overall investment portfolio that are going to be big growth drivers. And so if you have home prices going up and you also have rents that are going up, we think it's a very safe, stable place to be right now as a real estate investor looking to buy a home. So anyway, again, my name is Ryan Heinricher. I'm the Florida Portfolio Manager for Done For You Real Estate. Hopefully we get to have the opportunity to work with you in the future. Thank you so much for your time.